I'm Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton tonight. The radical and dangerous hard left continue to weaponise Lucy Letby's wicked crimes as a London-based actress and columnist claims she is just another violent white woman who has been flying under the radar since the transatlantic slave trade.
Presenting it like an anomaly when actually, when we look at it, historically and presently, the violence of white women is not an anomaly, it is the standard.
So that is the columnist Kelechi Okafor calling the murder of 7 innocent babies by a white woman the standard. In my digest next, I'll call out the shocking rise of anti-white racism that has exploded during the Letby case. Then my superstar panel, Wootton. Tonight, I'm joined by that other white woman, Christine Hamilton, alongside Kwasi Kwarteng and Matthew Laza. Plus, as it's revealed, the parents of Letby's victims can only claim bereavement damages of 15,000 quid. Should they be allowed to sue the NHS for up to 20 million? Former Victims Commissioner Baroness Helen Newlove and former Health Minister David Mallet tackle that in the clash. Elsewhere tonight, she resigned in disgrace over the Nigel Farage debanking scandal, but the former NatWest CEO, Dame Alison Rose, could still pocket £2.4 million. So does free speech suppression now pay in Big Brother Britain? Tory Deputy Chairman Lee Anderson joins me live in the studio to yank the woke fat cats back into the real world. I'll also speak to Paul Burrell and Angela Levin after bombshell new revelations from a friend of the Prince of Wales, proving just how bad things have got between William and Harry. And Emily Bridges lands a sympathetic feature in Woke Vogue magazine. But is the cyclist telling the truth by saying that trans competitors have no physical advantage over biological women? British Olympic great Sharon Davies is an expert in this field, and she'll go head-to-head on that shortly. Tomorrow's front pages are on the way too, with the latest on the potential death of Wagner leader Prigozhin. You'll get the breaking news on that first. This is Dan Wootton tonight. Let's go. You're watching GB News, Britain's news channel. I mean, very shocking story out of Russia, isn't it? Well, actually, perhaps the least shocking story in recent memory. However, some claims tonight that maybe Prigozhin was not actually on the plane. The latest now with Rhiannon Jones.
Dan, thank you. Your top stories from the GB newsroom. Yes, as we've been hearing, Russia says Wagner boss Yevgeny Prigozhin may have been among 10 people killed in a plane crash north of Moscow. These images are purportedly the moment the plane fell out of the sky. 8 bodies have been found at the crash site, according to a Russian news agency. It's not yet known or been confirmed if Prigozhin's was among the bodies. It's understood the aircraft was en route to St. Petersburg with 7 passengers and 3 crew members on board. President Joe Biden says there isn't that much that happens in Russia that Putin isn't behind. Meanwhile, residents in Moscow have been given their reaction to the crash.
It's a tragedy that the plane crashed. That means there were casualties. Well, it was to be expected because of some of the things he did or didn't do. I don't know, but we think he did. They should be punished. Not necessarily by the main man in this country, could be someone else. He had a lot of enemies as far as I know.
Administrators for Wilko have denied claims by the GMB union that the stricken retailer will close the majority of its stores next week, calling it speculation. The union, which represents more than 3,000 of the company's staff, said earlier it was told a raft of redundancies would follow. Wilko tumbled into administration 2 weeks ago, putting the future of its 400 shops in doubt. Former NatWest Chief Executive Dame Alison Rose is set to receive a £2.4 million pay package a month after quitting. Dame Alison resigned following the row over the closure of Nigel Farage's bank account, but is still working her 12-month notice period. Investigations into her actions are still ongoing after she admitted discussing personal banking details with a journalist. The company says it will continue to review her planned pay and bonus payouts based on its findings. Experts are hailing the UK's first womb transplant as a medical milestone. A 34-year-old woman in England received the organ from her older sister and is now planning to undergo IVF later this year. The operation at the Churchill Hospital in Oxford took around 17 hours. Around 50 babies have been born worldwide following womb transplants. And India has become the first nation to land near the moon's south pole. The history-making Chandrayaan-3 is hoping to find samples of water-based ice on its mission, which scientists say could support human habitation. The country is only the 4th to achieve a soft landing on the satellite. Prime Minister Narendra Modi called it the victory cry of a new India. The UK Space Agency has congratulated the Indian Space Research Organisation on its success. TV online, DAB+ radio and on TuneIn. This is GB News. Now it's back to Dan.
I want to start tonight by introducing you to the apparently acceptable face of racism and bigotry in Britain today. Kelechi Okafor is a Nigerian-born, London-raised actress and increasingly high-profile social commentator who has written for the I newspaper, Grazia and Elle magazine. She also believes that Lucy Letby's depraved killing of 7 babies, making her the most prolific serial killer of children in modern history, is not an anomaly, but standard for white women. Watch her astonishing rant, which, because she is engaging in anti-white racism, has been shrugged off by those who would be calling for riots in the street if any other ethnic group were being attacked in this manner.
I'm here to talk about the way that news platforms keep presenting Lucy. They keep scratching their heads or appearing to scratch their heads that, oh my God, how could somebody who looks like this be a baby killer? First of all, I don't know what you're saying that she looks like. But anyway, you're trying to tell me that this apparently attractive white woman who looks like an angel, why would she do such? How could she do such? And they're presenting it as if this is an anomaly. Had to get my words there. They're presenting it like an anomaly when actually, when we look at it historically and presently, the violence of white women is not an anomaly. It is the standard, right?
Her evidence to make such an egregiously racist claim? Queen Elizabeth, the first of the 16th century, of course. But it continues, according to her, right up to the US civil rights era.
At the things that happened around the civil rights era and segregation and things like that. Like, white women are not separate from the evil of white supremacy. White womanhood, in fact, I'll push it further. White womanhood was constructed for the sake of white supremacist heteropatriarchy, in order that white supremacist heteropatriarchy and those who ascribe to it would have something to fight for. If you present white women under this myth and falsehood of purity and innocence, it then means that you can create an other, a shadow self that needs to fight in order to protect them.
No one is trying to protect Lucy Letby or any other white murderer, far from it. But we are also not saying that the depraved and despicable Letby, who should rot in jail before going to hell, committed her crimes or was allowed to commit her crimes because of the colour of her skin. Just like I would never suggest any non-white murderer was inherently evil simply because of their ethnic background. But Kelechi is part of the left who will stop at nothing to bring identity politics into every single issue in an attempt to sow division in our previously united country.
Lucy Letby is not an anomaly. She is the standard. Even if you're working in an environment where, yeah, we're not saying that every white woman is going around killing people, but the same system and construct that protected her, even when people were raising the alarm that, oh, this woman is dangerous, the same construct that protects her is the same construct that protects white women in the workplace when a grievance is raised against them because they're doing something wildly racist, very, 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 very underhanded, and they cry, and HR will say the person that raised the grievance who is not white, that they are the person at fault.
Lucy Letby is the standard for white British women. I mean, what I've just seen there is truly sickening. But sadly, this hatred and discrimination is fast becoming the norm. Woke Glamour magazine ran a column by Nadine Asbali suggesting that Letby's white privilege helped her commit murders in plain sight because white women like her are shrouded in a veneer of fragility that protects them. Where is the evidence for that? And Britain's race baiter-in-chief, Dr. Shola, has been incessant.
Lucy Letby exemplifies how ideology of whiteness keeps Britain in a chokehold. They believed her tears, denials, even though evidence said otherwise, for no other reason than she's white. A black or brown nurse would have been reported to the police immediately and sacked for suspicion.
These double standards stink. The establishment media and social media is allowing anti-white racism to thrive because people have become too scared to call it out. Well, I'm not. But to respond now, my superstar panel, the author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton, former Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng, and the former Labour Party advisor Matthew Laza. Kwasi Kwarteng, I believe what I just witnessed was racism. Am I wrong?
Look, I think you're right. And also what I find really depressing is that I think part of her belief, she doesn't really believe. She's just trying to create a stir. I see this a lot. So people are saying outrageous things simply because they want to draw attention to themselves. And clearly to say that this is the standard, you know, a young woman killing 7 babies is the standard for a particular ethnic group that's a scandal. That's an outrage. And I think it is racism. I mean, if she were Jewish or Pakistani or black, and someone said, this is the standard for that ethnic group, there'd be outcry.
There would be riots on the streets.
There would be an utter outcry. They'd be cancelled, they'd be sacked, that you would never hear of them.
It would be leading every single
Again.
news bulletin in the country.
And I think, I don't know what her aims are, and what she said was outrageous and unacceptable. But my worry is that there's a cynical play, if you like, where people are just trying to attract attention to themselves. And you saw this with...
Well, they're becoming very famous. She's a big
That's
columnist.
right, we're talking about her.
She's writing for Glamour. She's writing for Elle
That's
magazine.
right.
She's
And
writing for the
we
I newspaper.
here are talking about her. So she can say outrageous, inflammatory, racist, bigoted things and get a hearing. And that's the scandal.
So, Christine Hamilton, you are one of these horrific white women dating back to Elizabeth I, and apparently the sort of evil perpetuated by Letby is standard.
Look,
you're just like her, according to this woman, Christine.
It's utterly ridiculous. That is ridiculous. What is so appalling is the way she is using the tragic death of these babies as a weapon in her race war. That's basically what it is. I mean, the only thing I would say about Lucy Letby, as in it would have applied if it was Kelechi who was the nurse who'd committed these murders. What does a murderer look like? What does a mass murderer look like? Is it a pantomime villain, you know, with a hook, an eye patch and a wooden leg? You know, there is no benchmark for a mass murderer. So the fact that somebody doesn't look like a murderer is bound to make people think, well, you know, it couldn't be Kwasi, it couldn't be Matthew, it couldn't be Dan, you know. I think there is an element of that, but it's nothing to do with the fact that she was white, it was just everything else about her. But if you actually look at the female murderers in this country, they are all white, so that might have led one to believe that she could have been the murderer. I mean, we have Mara Hindley, Rose West, Beverly Allitt, and then, of course, the other great medical murderer was also white, Dr. Shipman. But what
nobody
she's
said
tried
at that
to
time
do is appalling.
But forgive me, Christine, nobody mentioned their ethnicity
of course
at that time.
not. No, I'm not.
I mean, I remember the Beverly Allitt case, which was, what, 2007? And that wasn't even an issue. But the times we're in,
I know.
High identity politics.
I know,
people...
but the thing is, think of the sensitivities, though, in this country, Christine,
It's
every time that there is
stirring the pot.
a Muslim terrorist to not link any part of the crime to their religion,
Well, look,
for example.
the way the Rotherham, the Pakistani rape gangs were allowed to go unchecked.
Because everyone was too scared of
everybody was terrified to mention their race.
Matthew Lazar, why are views like this thriving among the hard left?
Well, I think partly Kwasi has got it absolutely right. It's clickbait and it's people trying to cause outrage. But I mean, it is absolutely scandalous. But actually, what's interesting is it's not just on the hard left. The guy who stars himself as Britain's first black farmer, Wilfred Emmanuel Jones, who was a Tory candidate.
Right, he was.
This week has been criticised quite rightly.
That's exactly right.
Saying that the lionesses
and
aren't
I
diverse
called him
enough.
out.
Yeah, the only reason
I called him out. It was nothing to do with
But actually, if you look at... I know Wilfred, and he's, you know, I get on with him, but he's pushing a book. He's pushing his life story. That's right, yeah. And so clearly he understands the way modern media works. The more outrageous...
But Kwasi, how terrible is that?
It's
that
terrible.
Racial division now sells.
No,
That's
completely
terrible.
And that's what he's doing. But, you know, you and I have been in sort of public affairs for a long time, and it's got far worse in the last 3 or 4 years.
Has it never used to be
5
like
years.
this?
Than it was 10 years ago.
Ironically, don't you think the BLM movement has actually encouraged division?
I think there are lots of things. I mean, I remember Roads Must Fall in 2015, BLM. There's a whole range of movements that are seeking to sow division. And I hate to say it, but they make money out of it. The BLM people make millions.
They're in luxury mansions.
That's right, that's right.
There's been a suggestion in some parts of the press that because one of the doctors, or several of the doctors who were making complaints about Lucy were not white, that they were disregarded. But in fact, the very first doctor who made a complaint was white.
Yeah.
The people who should pay for this with their jobs are the bureaucrats at the Countess of Chester Hospital who would not follow the scent. It was given to them on a plate and they refused. They actually said that the damage to the hospital reputation, it would damage the hospital reputation and it would turn the neonatal unit into a crime scene. That was their concern.
But what's a bigger issue, and I find it really disturbing with being in public affairs, public life, whatever, government, is that people are willfully sowing division. Not because they care about the justice, but because they want to bolster their own, their own platform.
Indeed.
They want to make money. They want to get
like Ngozi Fulani.
Of course, exactly. And by the way, that's exactly what Kelechi is doing.
That's exactly right.
We approached her responsibly earlier today. We actually gave her an opportunity to be here to defend her racism because we were very honest with the fact that I was going to accuse her of racism. She has instead decided to throw lots of insults at me while ironically telling everyone on social media to be kind. So there again, you have the hypocrisy of the left. But we do always present both sides of the story here on GB News. So this is what Kelechi has said. I would like to take this time to say I'm saddened by such accusations. I'm not racist. I haven't got a racist bone in my body. Let's not lose focus on where the outrage should legitimately be directed. Be kind.
You can't be racist against white people. It's just not possible.
Yeah. I also think anyone who says those two words, be kind, are usually the biggest trolls who like to spew the most abuse. Mandula Kwasi Kwarteng, Christine Hamilton, my superstar panel with me all night, but coming up in a blockbuster edition of The Real World with Lee Anderson, the Tory deputy chairman, hits out at NatWest for rewarding its debanking chief exec with a multi-million-pound payout. We'll also have more on Sadiq Khan's ULEZ lie. But next in the clash, as it's revealed, the NHS could face a bumper lawsuit over Letby's murders should all of the victims' families receive up to £20 million in compensation. Former Victims Commissioner Baroness Helen Newlove takes on ex-Health Minister David Mallet in the clash. But what do you think? Dan at gbnews.com. Vote in our poll at GB News on Twitter. We're back after this.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com. You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, nah, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Stand by for Tory Deputy Chair Lee Anderson live in the studio shortly. First, though, the clash. And two parents have described the terrifying moment that killer nurse Letby was left alone with their child. Mike and Victoria Whitfield believe that their daughter Felicity was one of her first victims and said it was a mother's instinct that may have saved their child. Watch.
3 o'clock in the morning, I just had an urge to go down. I went downstairs, I sat by the cot. But as I was walking towards the cot, Lucy was standing over the cot. She just looked up at me and then walked away, and then I walked towards the cot. I sat down, and within seconds, all the beepers started going off and all hell broke loose.
Chilling. Thankfully, Felicity made it out of the Countess of Chester Hospital and she has grown up to be a healthy and happy 9-year-old. But many of Letby's surviving victims now suffer from conditions like cerebral palsy or other learning difficulties, and those families are each suing the NHS for between £1 and £20 million. Lawyers say the damages bill for the health service could total £50 million. However, it's been revealed parents of Letby's murder victims can only claim bereavement damages of £15,000. So is that a rank injustice? Indeed, should all of Letby's victims receive up to £20 million each in compensations for the family? Dan at gbnews.com. Vote in our poll at GB News on Twitter. But two brilliant guests to discuss this now. The former Tory Health Minister, David Mallow, and the former Victims Commissioner, Baroness Helen Newlove, whose husband, you'll remember, was horrifically murdered by a gang of youths in 2007. So, Helen, obviously, you know this from so many different angles. You know personally like what it's like to be a victim, but you've also spent many years working to represent victims. In some ways, it feels crude talking about finances here, but do you understand why some people are saying it's very unfair that for the families of the murdered children, they'll only receive between £12,000 and £15,000?
Totally get the when anybody mentions money, and I say this personally, is it feels like blood money, because that's the first thought in your mind, and so it doesn't sit comfortable because it doesn't bring your loved one back. However, when you step aside and look how the system is placed, they value life, the system values life at these figures. And for me, each case is completely different. I personally felt very much that I had to prove every point for my girls and from myself in Gary's murder. But for these families, they're already causing a divide because sadly there wasn't somewhere a hung jury, and there were 7 convicted murder charges. And so that then divides the family as well. And the amount that's given from criminal injuries compensation on an NHS award, they are very, very low. It does not wipe out the emotion that the people are going through. But if it helps them to actually, they may be able to function a lot better. We've all got finances. And what I always say is, it may be, this goes on the trial that we all see, but in real life, practical issues still have to be, mortgages, bills, everything else has to be paid for. And some families that we know in these cases have their children have life, changing injuries. So they've got that added burden on as well. And I just think, we need to look at this quite thoroughly in this case.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I guess, David Mallow, one of the issues is, and you'll know this as a former health minister, of course, all of the compensation money is still being paid by the taxpayer.
I think this compensation point, though it's important, obviously, if one of the children who was a victim of Letby survived but has life-changing injuries that carry on, well, then it's right that compensation should be paid. But I think the idea of fining the NHS, for the 15 or 20 million pound bill because Letby was let loose on their children, that seems to me to be wide of the mark. What matters far more, and I cry out to see evidence that this will happen, is that we can get a system where the people who manage the NHS, first of all, pay proper respect for clinicians and also can be punished if they fail to live up to legitimate expectations of the public and actually weed out the Letbys of this world before they cause more loss, murderous injuries. I mean, where all this went badly wrong was that a group of doctors, effectively all of the doctors, in what after all was a small unit, 14-bed unit, were saying, get rid of Letby. And these idiots who were in charge thought it would be damaging to the reputation of the unit to get rid of Letby, so they wouldn't. And the doctors even had to apologise to Letby. Now, those people, there should be some way in which those people can be punished. For instance, have their fact...
criminally, do you think, David? Oh, I see. OK, so you're talking about via the NHS.
But the point I'm making is, what this exposes is a great gap, a yawning gap between clinicians and managers.
Yeah.
What we must try and be sure is that, well, for instance, in teaching, people go round and if they think a school is being badly run, action can be taken. There doesn't seem to be any basic discipline over the sort of people who were running the Countess of Chester Hospital. And that's what we have to address.
Well, indeed. I couldn't agree with that more, but I guess, Baroness Ulove, though, it still does come down to the appalling treatment of victims because, much like David's just been talking about, there were victims through this process who were crying out to be heard and did not even have their letters answered by the hospital chief executive. Then you go to the court process itself. They never got to read out their victim impact statement for Letby to actually hear because the government has dragged its feet in terms of introducing this new legislation where criminals would be forced to be in the dock or, on the day of their sentencing. So I just wonder if you believe we treat victims with the dignity that they deserve.
No, they're not treated with dignity they deserve. And listening to David as well about the system, there's managers, there seems to be so many chiefs and not enough Indians.
Yeah.
And for me, the NHS, why are we not going for the head of the trust? Why are we not looking where, goes from the top? I don't want somebody, I am so passionate about this because nobody is held accountable. The families have gone through a 10-month court trial, besides all the investigations before it came to court. Believe you me, you sit there with no legal representation, you listen to the really sensitive detail that Joe Bloggs doesn't know on the street because of the legal requirements. And quite rarely, I don't think we should as well. It's private to the family who are really going through it and have no voice. She didn't show up for the sentencing, so the victim's impact statement, she controlled that. But more importantly, the NHS never says sorry. The NHS is never accountable. And to have an inquiry on a failure to deal with the most vulnerable babies by supposed to be a caring professional is you're going to spend millions on an inquiry, and yet it doesn't seem right and fitting to with the to support these families, not just for the health of the children that have survived, but also the health of the parents so that they can look after their children.
Totally.
It does not happen. It doesn't go together.
No,
and I'm sorry,
exactly.
But there has to be accountability. They should be in the dock, and you know, it costs a lot of money because you need legal advice. That's where all the bills go, and they need to have a black box thinking in the NHS like the airlines, because they're never ever going to learn, and we're going to have lessons learned, which is insulting for the families.
Hear, hear. David, just a final quick word on the fact that the government, despite promising to do something, still actually hasn't introduced legislation to force someone like Letby into the dock. As a former minister, what do you think can be done? Because there's some concerns that she can't be forced into court.
I know, of course there is, and I spent 5 years as a Home Office minister. Can I just tell you something? This is about this government and about this government's competence. I've heard on a number of occasions in the last couple of years that they want to change the law to ensure that people who are charged with offences have to turn up in court and hear things said. Do you know what? You could get a bill like that through Parliament in 2 or 3 days.
Yeah.
Who is going to?
So where is it? Exactly.
They did it in South Australia in 2017.
Ask the people who are running this country.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Why don't they act? Look, at the end of the day, I'm sorry to have to say this comes down to competence. And it's a profound lack of competence that is so widely to be seen in this government and in this opposition. It has to do with the fact that politics no longer attracts people who are good at getting things done.
David Maller. Baroness Helen Newlove, really fascinating and important conversation. Thank you both for being with me tonight. But who do you agree with? As bereaved parents are told they are only due £15,000 should the families of all of Letby's victims receive up to £20 million in compensation. Angel writes, not when the £20 million would be paid by taxpayers and come out of the NHS budget, so that's more patients who suffer. Veronica writes, compensation has to be considered. Children who have been murdered can't have a price tag, and no matter the amount of money will undo what this wicked woman did. Money should be put into bereavement counselling so these parents have an avenue to go to for help, and I hope they do get that, actually. Via the email, Elizabeth writes, yes, the NHS should be sued. The money could be found by getting rid of or slimming down the pay of the NHS management, or even better, get rid of the NHS and start again. Your verdict is now in. This is the closest clash for a long time. You're totally split. 49% of you say the families should receive compensation of up to 20 million. 51% say they should not. Coming up, Sharon Davies speaks out after trans cyclist Emily Bridges outrageously claims trans competitors have no advantage over biological women. First, though, the weather.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there, it's Aidan McGibbon here from the Met Office with the GB News forecast. Showers for many of us over the next 24 hours, even across southern areas where it has been relatively warm and fine over the last few days. It's going to turn cooler as low pressure starts to sink south. As that happens, some intense heat over the near continent will spark some thunderstorms through the evening and overnight, those affecting northern France, but some showery activity could just spread into southwestern parts of England and then eventually other parts of the English Channel coast overnight. Some heavier rain also affecting much of central and northern Scotland. In between, a lot of cloud cover and a warm night for many, especially towards the south. But it's in the south where we're going to see some lively activity first thing, some heavier rain predominantly, with the thunderstorms that develop across northern France generally staying around the Channel or across the near continent. Much of that moves out of the way, but still some showery rain for the southeast into the afternoon. Heavy rain moves through northern Scotland, replaced by showers. Showers also affecting Northern Ireland, but actually for northern England, West Wales, southwest England by the afternoon, plenty of fine and bright weather to come. Feeling a bit cooler, and Friday's certainly a cooler day across the UK. Low pressure will bring a northwesterly airflow, a bright start to the southeast, but elsewhere a lot of showers coming through on a brisk northwesterly breeze. In between, some sunny spells and a similar setup for Saturday. A mix of sunny spells and showers, and cool for many.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Coming Coming up, as King Charles holds a series of royal summits at Balmoral amid reports he's slowing down despite only being on the throne for a year, is the monarch wise to hand more responsibility to the Walesers? Royal author Angela Levin joins me live for her exclusive insight on William and Charles's strong new bond that the monarch hopes will help set up the next generation of the royal family. But next, as it's revealed, NatWest CEO Dame Alison Rose could receive a £2.4 million payout despite trying to cover up the Nigel Farage debanking scandal. Should she do the honourable thing and refuse the money? Tory party deputy chairman Lee Anderson weighs in on that. Sadiq Khan's big Leslie, Ray Spate is attacking the Lionesses and much more. He's live in the studio next.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point.
And action.
Sergeant Reed, my superstar panel, they're already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views, and often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think. Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often there will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
OK, I'm going to transport you now to places the MSM don't dare to go. The real world with Lee Anderson. And earlier tonight, Nigel Farage hit out at NatWest after it emerged that ex-CEO Dame Alison Rose will receive a £2.4 million severance payment after resigning in disgrace following the debanking scandal. Watch.
No, I thought to begin with, perhaps it was some form of sick joke. After all, think about what she did. She broke client confidentiality by telling the BBC's business editor at a dinner that I was a customer of Coutts Bank.
An NatWest spokesman said, like other employees, when an investigation outcome is pending, Alison is currently receiving her fixed pay, while no decision on her remuneration will be taken until the relevant investigations are complete. But Lee, shouldn't she do the honourable thing and just refuse the money?
Well, she should do the honourable thing, Dan, but is she an honourable person? I think not. I mean, here's a woman who's basically had a pop at Nigel. She's got his bank account stopped. She dished, not the dirt, but she spoke about things that she shouldn't have spoke about.
Using the BBC to do so.
Using the BBC to do it. And now we're here, she's going to get paid £2.4 million. It's disgraceful. She should do the right thing, do the honourable thing, and give that money back, or just refuse that money. But I don't think she's an honourable person. And, you know, there's going to be people out there watching this tonight thinking, my goodness, how can she get away with this?
Totally sickened by it, indeed. Now, look, Sadiq Khan's deputy, can you believe this? Shirley Rodriguez has urged scientists to alter a Lancet study showing London's ULEZ actually has no impact on children's health. So isn't it now getting to the point, Lee, where unless Slippery Starmer actually disowns Khan, he has no credibility?
I think Khan at the moment, Dan, is a law unto himself in London. We know the evidence he's been providing to get away with this ULEZ expansion. We know it's dodgy. It's a cash grab. He's doing everything he can to rob the people of London and out of London. And now we've got the proof that he's been at it. He's been cooking the books. This man is a disgrace to this country and a disgrace to our capital. And I hope that Susan Hall, our mayoral candidate, our brilliant mayoral candidate, digs her heels in and gets rid of this idiot next year.
And she has pledged to scrap ULEZ expansion. Obviously, both sides of the story on GB News. A spokesperson for Khan said the ULEZ analysis from the engineering department at Imperial only paints a partial picture, not accounting for the full lifetime impact of the scheme and only focusing on its immediate impact around its launch. It is commonplace for academic experts to disagree with how other academic studies are interpreted, as was the case here. Now, Lee, another big moment of the week. Can you believe these folk who decided to use the blonde-haired, blue-eyed makeup of the Lionesses to criticise the team rather than actually embracing their wonderful achievement in terms of getting to the World Cup final?
You know what, Dan, when these scouts, when these selectors are picking the team, they go out and watch the best teams, they watch the best players, and I'm fairly sure that when they're looking at these footballers, whether it's men or women, they look at the best footballers. They're not bothered what colour hair they've got, what colour their eyes, what colour their skin. They pick the best players. These idiots that keep coming on at every single sporting event talking about diversity and equality. Oh, I mean, where are they when we're looking at the relay team?
Well, you tweeted that,
yeah,
didn't
I tweeted that. Yeah, the women's relay team.
There we go.
You know,
and I look at that and I just think the best are British.
Yeah, all black ladies. Who gives a monkey what colour they are, mate? Seriously, who gives a toss?
Because you want the best.
The best of British are there representing our country. That's all we want.
But by the way, when you actually crunch the numbers, the representation of black women in the Lionesses is actually 3 times the overall population anyway. So there's no issue here anyway. There's actually over-representation of black women in the Lionesses, which is great. So people are looking for an issue.
Yeah.
In fact, they're trying to stoke a race war.
I think what it is, Dan, there has been an influx of stupidity in this country, and these people that we're talking about at the moment, they're representative of this. I think they lay awake at night thinking of the most ridiculous thing they can say the following morning. They need to shut up, let our brilliant women get on with winning football tournaments. That's what they need to do, and support them.
Now, this was an important one. The Institution of Economic Affairs has warned that Labour's plans for tougher LGBT hate speech laws actually risk aiding censorship and attacking liberal values. Now, that's because it claims the likes of Stonewall and Mermaids prove that transgender activists do not aim to win the debate, but rather prevent the debate from occurring. So do you think a Starmer government could actually spark the end of free speech in Britain?
The Labour Party, Dan, I mean, I've been in the Labour Party, as you know, they do not like free speech. The only speech they like is when you're agreeing with what they're saying. They're not a broad church, as they claim to be. If they do not like something you say, whether it be on this issue or any other issue, they will close you down as soon as possible. This is quite despicable, you know, and I fear for this country, if a Starmer government, Slippery Starmer government gets in, they will shut down free speech. I've been in Labour meetings when you say something they don't disagree with, they they pile on you straight away. It's wicked, it's evil, and we need to be very, very careful. Very careful.
And a Labour Party spokesperson said this is nonsense from the organisation that created the blueprint for Liz Truss's disastrous kamikaze budget, which crashed the economy and saddled working people with a mortgage bombshell. Now, look, finally, Lee, Tory London mayoral candidate, you mentioned her earlier, Susan Hall, good woman. She's clashed with the Labour loudmouth David Lammy for calling the Notting Hill Carnival, which takes place this bank holiday Monday, as dangerous. But actually, is she right that it should be moved from its traditional location to prevent a wave of violence?
Well, look, Dan, I think last year we had somebody fatally stabbed. We had about 70 police officers injured, over hundreds of arrests. It's a dangerous event. It's not the caring, loving, free event what we had 20, 30 years ago. It's actually quite dangerous. And here we have a woman, a great candidate, who's coming up with solutions to make this event a safer event, not just for for the public for the London public. And we've got Lammy. I mean, what's his solution? All he wants is more of the same. He needs to shut up, he needs to keep his nose out and let Susan... Seriously, he does.
I agree.
What an absolute idiot.
I agree. Shut up, David Lammy.
Shut up, David.
Lee Anderson, back Friday night, 7 p.m. for more of The Real World. You know you want it. Angela Levin's next. Lee, I think we might still be on air. We're having technical issues.
Okay.
So let's chat. What do you have coming up on Friday?
We've got, we record the show tomorrow, as you know, Dan. I've got James Sunderland MP for Bracknell and some Momentum member called James Snyder. So we're going to have a bit of a debate on Jeremy Corbyn, I think, and what he's up to these days. We did have a psychic on, Psychic Sally, but she's had to cancel, so I didn't see that coming, and neither did she. So we don't know what we're going to chat about tomorrow. So I mean, it's always a good show. We're back in Buckhurst.
Well, look, I hope you've got more than I do right now, which is only one camera. But let's go to the...
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things. We've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it. like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my new show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m, where real people get to meet those in power and hold them to account. Every week, we'll be hearing your views from up and down the country in the real world. Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Sharon Davies and Paul Burrell is still to come, but first it's time for leading royal biographer and journalist Angela Levin. Now, you might think King Charles has his feet up currently as he enjoys his annual summer holiday at Balmoral. But in truth, this is a critical week in the future of the British monarchy. With the one-year anniversary of his reign fast approaching, Charles is reportedly determined to cement the future of the monarchy, and he wants William and Kate to be at the heart of that. Insiders told the Daily Mirror that the monarch wants to capitalise on the couple's increasing popularity and the Princess of Wales' undoubted star quality. So the Sunday Times reports that King Charles is a caretaker king. Maybe that's not unfounded, as it appears he's keen to share responsibility, aware that his reign will be significantly shorter than his mother's and accepting of the fact that heir William will continue his legacy for decades to come. So, Angela Levin, great to have you here. Apologies for the technical difficulties that we are suffering tonight, but you have some exclusive reporting regarding exactly what Charles wants to happen over the course of his reign, and you don't actually think it's a bad thing.
Yeah, I think it's a very good thing, actually, and I disagree with the way it's been talked about. I think he had tremendous sadness when his mother died, and the knowledge that he suddenly was going to become king was quite overwhelming. But I think with the time that he took to think about it as the weeks and months went on, he realised that what an extraordinary woman he was and that he didn't want to make lots of changes. He wanted to carry on and with the things that she did. And I think that it's a marvellous idea that he wants to do this with William because they're bonded together. They've both had these terrible wounds that Harry has caused. And I think together they can really make something very important. They did the coronation together as well, so that William can bring the flavour of modernity to it, and Charles can actually do all sorts of things that he wants to do and thinks is very important. The Commonwealth is very important to him, and William and Catherine will be there looking after it and trying to bring them back.
So you don't think we should be worried, Angela, about the fact that Charles seems to be slowing down, that he hasn't necessarily charged forward with Camilla in his first year, like many of us predicted he would?
Yes. No, I think it's very good that he hasn't, because I think once he'd got it, that he could relax. He didn't have to worry about whether he would be king, whether all his plans wouldn't come off. He'd got it, and he found that the people liked him, the people were warm towards him. He doesn't need to work like that. He needs to keep the monarchy for the public so that they like him and they enjoy what they offer. But I think it's all very positive and warm, and he's much more accessible. And I think it's just slightly different. But he works incredibly hard every single day.
And you say that the bond between Charles and William is stronger than ever. That seems to be the case, with a friend of Prince William telling the US outlet, The Daily Beast, that there is absolutely no chance this summer of a royal reunion between Charles and Harry, or William and Harry. So the friend of William said Charles won't be seeing Harry, and nor will William. They say that's because of the portrayal of both the Netflix documentary and the memoir Spare. But it's interesting, isn't it? Because we know that Charles is much more of a soft touch when it comes to Harry, but he seems to be listening to his eldest son in terms of how to deal with it.
He'd also listened to Camilla, who's been very, very helpful in calming him, making him laugh and making him understand, and actually carrying on, not actually being so dreadfully upset anymore, that Harry can, as he said, live happily in Montecito, but the royal family would move on themselves. And I think that he's very happy to do all the work that he has to do. All the palaces, you know, they need redoing. He loves doing that. And some of them will be turned into museums. And I think he wants to move the whole structure, but slowly, because he understands what we're all going through. It's very difficult financially and emotionally for the country. And so he doesn't want to keep on coming up with bright ideas that might cost a lot of money and be not very successful. He's just concentrating.
But you think it's the right decision, though, not to have this reunion with Harry?
Yes, I think so, because you can't trust Harry. You don't know if he's going to sell whatever you say to him to earn a lot of money, Netflix or somebody else. You don't know that he's going to actually be honest about what was said, if what was said. And if he comes with a whole list of what apologies he's want, going back into his childhood, it's going to disturb you and make it really unpleasant, unless he's really determined to come with an apology from himself and also not with Meghan. Then there might be a chance, but he won't do that.
Angela Levin, so great to speak to you. Thank you, Angela. We will speak next week. It's 10 p.m. I'm Dan Wootton. Tonight, we once ruled the waves, but our papier-mâché borders are now an international joke. Brazen illegal migrants film themselves laughing all the way to Britain before showing off their luxury hotels for the world to see on TikTok. And with 19,000 now confirmed to have crossed the channel this year, is this the final proof our country has turned into a global laughing stock? That's the big debate next with my superstar panel, and tonight I'm joined by Christine Hamilton, Kwasi Kwarteng and Matthew Laza. Plus, who better to assess a bombshell new poll that predicts all 42 red wall seats held by Conservatives will return to Labour than the former Chancellor himself. Kwasi will reveal if his successor Jeremy Hunt needs to return to a tax-cutting agenda to have any chance of the Tories triumphing. Also tonight, is trans cyclist Emily Bridges pulling our chain when claiming biological men have no sporting advantage over women? British Olympic hero turned women's rights champion Sharon Davies thinks so. She joins me live to lay down the facts shortly. Meanwhile, a pal of Prince William claims that he and the King will be snubbing Harry this summer over his Netflix and Spare betrayals. But should the royals be reaching out to the isolated Sussexes? Princess Diana's former butler, Paul Burrell, is uncancelled on the family he knew so well later in the show. And radical left actress Kelechi Okafor is slammed for using the Lucy Letby atrocities to spark a race war.
Presenting it like an anomaly when actually, when we look at it historically and presently, the violence of white women is not an anomaly, it is the standard.
Find out who's nominated her when we reveal the, who's going to become Greatest British Union Jackass later in the show. We'll also have the latest on the mysterious death of Wagner leader Prigozhin in a private jet crash north of Moscow. We'll discuss whether Putin could be involved as the front pages drop shortly. And with the latest on that breaking news, though, let's cross to Rhiannon Jones in the newsroom.
Dan, thank you. Your top stories from the GB newsroom. Wagner boss Yevgeny Prigozhin was on board a plane that crashed in western Russia. That's according to the country's aviation authority. It's released the names of those passengers on the flight. They include the mercenary group leader as well as its commander Dmitry Utkin. It's understood the aircraft was en route to St. Petersburg from Moscow. It's being reported the bodies of all 10 people travelling on board have now been recovered from the site. Residents in Moscow have been reacting to the crash.
It's a tragedy that the plane crashed. That means there were casualties. Well, it was to be expected because of some of the things he did or didn't do. I don't know, but we think he did. They should be punished. Not necessarily by the main man in this country, could be someone else. He had a lot of enemies as far as I know.
Donald Trump's former personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, has surrendered to Fulton County Jail over charges related to efforts to overturn the 2020 presidential election result. The former New York City mayor agreed to a $150,000 bail. He's one of several of the 19 people charged in Georgia election interference case to have turned themselves in. Trump, who denies wrongdoing, says he will surrender tomorrow. Back here, administrators for Wilko have denied claims by the GMB union that the stricken retailer will close the majority of its stores next week, calling it speculation. The union, which represents more than 3,000 of the company's staff, said earlier it was told a raft of redundancies would follow. Wilko tumbled into administration 2 weeks ago, putting the future of its 400 shops in doubt. Former NatWest Chief Executive Dame Alison Rose is set to receive a £2.4 million pay package a month after quitting. Dame Alison resigned following the row over the closure of Nigel Farage's bank account, but is still working her 12-month notice period. Investigations into her actions are still ongoing after she admitted discussing personal banking details with a journalist. Experts are hailing the UK's first womb transplant as a medical milestone. A 34-year-old woman in England received the organ from her older sister and is now planning to undergo IVF later this year. The operation at the Churchill Hospital in Oxford took around 17 hours. About 50 babies have been born worldwide following womb transplants. And in India, India has become the first nation to land near the moon's south pole. The history-making Chandrayaan-3 is hoping to find samples of water-based ice on its mission, which scientists say could support human habitation. The country is only the fourth to achieve a soft landing on the satellite. Prime Minister Narendra Modi called it the victory cry of a new India. This is GB News across the UK on TV, in your car, on digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. Now it's back over to Dan.
Tomorrow's news tonight. Now in our Media Buzz, let's kick off with the very first look at the front pages, hot off the press. And we'll start with the Metro, which leads with India over the moon. The paper saying that India has become only the 4th country ever to land a spacecraft on the moon. I'm going to talk a little bit about why we're sending them so much aid money later this hour. Have a feeling they might change up, though, given the breaking news, because, of course, the headline leading the eye tonight, Putin critic killed 60 days after mutiny. The paper says that the Wagner boss, Prigozhin, is believed dead as his private jet crashes over Russia. And we've got much more on the Prigozhin story later this hour too. But my superstar panel back with me now, the author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton, former Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng, and the former Labour Party advisor Matthew Laza. Now, a bombshell new poll has indicated that Rishi Sunak's tax spree is going to cost him dearly at the next general election. All 42 red wall seats held by the Conservatives are predicted to go to Labour. And according to separate analysis, this is partly driven by the cost of living crisis, with many of these constituencies among the most distressed financially and in need of a tax break. Not much hope of that, however, with high tax Hunt lodged in the Treasury. But after figures showed that government borrowing was £11 billion less than forecast, there have been widespread calls for the Chancellor to help Brits out. The Taxpayers Alliance said families and businesses are struggling with falling living standards and a 70-year high tax burden. They need to know that there is light at the end of the tunnel. And a chorus of influential Tory right-wingers, including John Redwood, Jacob Rees-Mogg and David Jones, unanimously declared that we need tax cuts now. And Kwasi Kwarteng, hello. You are the perfect man to have on the superstar panel tonight. Hunt's predecessor as Chancellor. I mean, look, I said to you at the start of the show, off-air, Kwasi, as the weeks and the months go by, surely it's now been proven that your financial prescription for the country was actually the right one. I mean, our growth is the lowest in the G7.
Well, it's low, and we're not going to get out of it unless we can grow the economy. And that's where Liz Truss as Prime Minister was 100% right. Now, you could argue about the delivery, you could argue about the speed, but the actual diagnosis was right. We need to grow our economy and we need to incentivise wealth creation. And without that, taxes are just simply going to increase and go higher.
So do you join this chorus of brilliant men like Redwood and Rees-Mogg saying,
good friends of mine,
you have to cut taxes?
So what he's done, I think, you know, having been there, I know what the pressures are. And I think there's a real urgency to just do things quickly. But they've done the steadying bit. They've done the consolidation. And now they're not going to go into the election and win without some offer to our people. If Rishi and Jeremy
he says he's not planning.
If they say we're going to tax you as much as Labour, there's no way we're going to win. If the tax offer in terms of, you know, taking money out of people's pockets is the same as it is now and is the same as Labour, I don't see how we have a chance of winning that election.
OK, so
there's got to be an offer to our people.
So let's be very clear on that. If Jeremy Hunt and Rishi Sunak do not cut taxes before the next election,
I don't see how you can win.
There is no way for them
I don't see because people, you know, who are very much under the pressure of the cost of living, they're paying ever more tax. They're going to ask themselves, should I vote Conservative or Labour? Those are the two alternatives. And if the Conservatives aren't offering anything, then there's no reason really to vote for Conservative as opposed to Labour.
Christine Hamilton, he's right, isn't he?
Absolutely, and he and Liz Truss were right when they said go for growth. Absolutely right, but the rest of what happened then is history. But Boris was aware when he won the election in 2019 that the red wall seats had lent their support. He used those words. They have lent me their support. And the Tories, you know, they'd got rid of Corbyn, which people voted for. They'd voted for Boris to get Brexit done. They voted for Boris, especially up in the red wall, because they thought that his levelling up agenda would produce goods for them. Yes, Corbyn has still gone. Brexit hasn't been done. The levelling up agenda hasn't happened. And, you know, the tide went rushing up the beach in 2019 towards the Tories. And I'm afraid now it is rapidly going out. And tax cuts, Rishi Sunak seems to be rather obsessed by inflation, but he destroyed the economy during COVID by all the furlough scheme and Eat Out to Help Out and all that. And the economy is in an appalling state now, and people vote on the way they feel about the pound in their pocket.
I mean, I spoke to Boris only on Sunday, and we were talking about a lot of these issues. And for me, once we got rid of him, we were on a downward spiral. That was clear. I mean,
that was the mistake.
That, to me, that was the beginning of kind of where we are. And I feel that, you know, someone like Boris and Rishi could do it. We need to have something positive. We can't just say, oh, we're not the other guys, but we're going to carry on.
Because they're bad.
Yeah.
But the problem is that's not going to get out
That's not good enough.
voters.
You're not going to win by saying you're not Labour.
Tories are presiding over tax levels that haven't been so high since the 70 years, the Attlee government. I mean, it's absurd. They need to get back to being Tories.
Is Boris missing the cuss and thrust? Does he want to return?
He's a great man. I mean, I think he's happy in as he described it, blameless rural obscurity, or he had some phrase, which is a great phrase. But, you know, I've always been a great friend and believer of his in him, and I think you know, he's got brilliant ideas. And actually, what I miss, you know, since he left the House of Commons, was that energy and that vision. And I hope
accuse Rishi of having too much energy.
Well, I'm hoping that we.
Oh.
Yeah, but look, I like
not too much charisma.
The thing about being in government is that you know all the people. They're all you know. We all get on actually on a personal level. But I think that what we need is a bit of vision.
Yeah. So you don't rule out a Boris comeback, having spoken to him?
I would never rule out a comeback from him.
Interesting. Matthew Laza, isn't there a possibility here that Labour could actually go into this election promising more tax cuts than the Tories?
I think that's perfectly possible. I think we may well see Labour pull a tax-cutting rabbit out of the hat. It will be targeted, and it will be for people on lower income scales, very much average income families. But I think there is a possibility, that Labour will pull a tax-cutting rabbit out of the hat, and certainly will make Alad Blair before '97 will make pledges on the basic rate. I think it would be absolutely certain.
So I mean, I don't know what Labour are going to do, but I think there's no way the Tories are going to win by just promising more of the same.
No, well, a very clear message from Jeremy Hunt's predecessor, and I hope Sunak and Hunt are listening to Kwasi.
Tories have got to get back to being Conservatives, otherwise people might as well vote for the real socialist thing.
Christine, how many times do we have to say it before we give up? No,
never give up, never give up.
No, that's true.
Robert Bruce and the Spider.
Now, look, breaking tonight, influential Vladimir Putin critic Yevgeny Prigozhin has been declared dead in a private jet crash north of Moscow. That has been confirmed in the past few minutes by the Russian Civil Aviation Authority. According to Russian media, the Wagner mercenary boss was one of 10 passengers on the plane when it crashed, killing everyone on board. Now, Wagner-linked Telegram channels have reported that the plane, which was owned by Prigozhin, was shot down by Russian air defences. In June, Prigozhin led a mutiny against Putin and marched on Moscow before backing down and fleeing to Belarus. Putin branded it an act of treachery that would be met with a harsh response. And while we obviously don't know for sure if there were any foul play going on here, the Russian president is suspected to have a particular penchant for taking care of political enemies. In September last year, Russian oil giant and vocal critic of the war in Ukraine, Ravel Maganov, mysteriously died after falling out the window of a Moscow hospital. Then, just months later, another tycoon turned critic of the conflict, Pavel Antov, met a similarly gruesome end after he fell from a hotel in India. And who could forget Boris Berezovsky, the oligarch who fled Russia for Britain in 2013 after falling out with Putin, before being found dead inside a locked bathroom of his Berkshire home after being strangled. Now, the coroner couldn't explain how he had died. Come on. Come on. What on earth? I mean, look, the thing is, Prigozhin, maybe not a great guy, but he was mad to get on a plane anywhere in Putin's
and
Russia,
actually,
right?
the killer line was his own private jet. I didn't know that, but it's his own plane. So
Christine, has Putin shot him down?
Definitely.
You can't say.
Allegedly, I'm so sorry. Allegedly.
I don't think he's going to suit.
It may be.
Are we going to get a Putin off-top complaint? Stranger things have happened. Matthew Larser, Kwasi Kwarteng, and Christine Hamilton do stand by, because coming up, illegal migrants filmed their easy journey from France to the UK on TikTok, laughing and joking as they arrive at our luxury hotels. So without borders as reliable as a wet paper bag, is our nation now a global laughing stock? My superstar panel will return to debate that soon. But next, trans cyclist Emily Bridges tells Woke Vogue magazine there's no evidence biological men have a sporting advantage over smaller, weaker women. British Olympic hero and women's rights champion Sharon Davies joins me live with the full facts and explains why we need to fight back against such propaganda. Sharon Davies live next.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point. But
And action.
Sergeant Reed, my superstar panel, they're already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think. Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often there will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Princess Diana's former butler Paul Burrell is still to come, but it's time now for Olympic swimmer and defender of women's sports, Sharon Davies. And remember trans athlete Emily Bridges, who before British cycling stepped in was topping podiums like this, where the best performing biological woman could only achieve 3rd place. Well, the woke darlings at Vogue have honoured the 25 women who they say are redefining Britain in 2023, with Bridges among them. Writing and posing for the magazine, Bridges declares wrong.
I was banned from competitive cycling because I'm trans. That won't stop me fighting for my rights.
Wrong, Emily. You could compete in the open category created specifically by British Cycling for trans athletes. They also claim that concerns about trans women having a physical advantage over biological women are, quote, unsubstantiating, adding...
A report found that biomedical factors such as bone density and lung size do not pose an advantage for trans athletes.
So, Sharon Davies, I wanted to start there because you've done a ton of research on this, and that is something that you strongly dispute, Sharon, right?
Right. It's not just me that strongly disputes it. It's pretty much everyone across the whole world. So this is why, obviously the World Cycling Association, the World Aquatics Association, Track and Field, British boxing, rowing, triathlon, they've all said, yes, all the science shows us that actually you can't remove male puberty advantage. And Emily's very, very deliberately missed out the fact that there's a Q angle, which if you're male, that's your, going to be much smaller. So the Q angle in women is quite a lot larger from your hips to your knees. In football, it means that 5 to 6 times as many women end up with knee problems. We saw that just recently with the World Cup. We lost a few of our players because of that. And when something like cycling, where you're sitting on a saddle and you're able to put that power through your legs so much better when that Q angle is smaller. So it's utter garbage to say that there's not an advantage. And you were spot on when you said that headline. It's extraordinary that Vogue can write something like that. I was banned from competitive cycling because I'm trans. Well, this time last year, Emily Bridges was cycling with the men in the university championships and, identifying as Emily Bridges, which is absolutely fine, and able to compete. And Emily Bridges will always be able to compete. However,
and that's in the open category, right, Sharon? And that's in the open category that Emily Bridges will be able to compete.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all that Emily Bridges is not able to do anymore is to compete with biological females who will have a disadvantage competing with someone who's biologically male. And we know that. There's 18 studies in the world. The last one was September of last year, which came out of Brazil, one of the largest studies on a huge number. And that said, even after 14 years, they couldn't remove the puberty advantage. So there's no way, that it's a level playing field. And I wish Emily good luck. I want her to be happy and safe, absolutely. But I'm still going to keep on fighting for the opportunity for people that are biologically female to have fair sport, and I'm not going to stop.
Do you know what I find so depressing about this particular case, Sharon? The complicity of Vogue magazine. Now, I remember a time when Vogue magazine used to be all about empowering and standing up for the rights of women, in this case, biological women. By including Emily Bridges in this list of 25 women who they say are going to redefine the world, isn't Vogue magazine actually saying that it doesn't respect women's sport? Because as you know, Sharon, as I know, women's sport is destroyed if biological men are able to compete. So actually, I'm furious with Vogue magazine. They would rather choose wokery than actually true feminism.
I know. I sometimes think that they just do these things deliberately because they know we're going to talk about it, right? So it just gives them profile. And part of me wants to not bother because it gets exactly what they want. But when you think of all the wonderful sportswomen that we have in the, in the UK, and I mean, I will just Katie Archibald. Okay, so Katie Archibald has won Olympic, European, Commonwealth, world gold medals. Our British girls won the Pursuit earlier this month in Glasgow for the first time since 2014. And this time last year, Katie was getting over from the fact that her fiance woke up in the morning and her fiance had died next to her. Okay, so the most harrowing situation. And 1 year later, she wins the World Championships. And they say of all the sports people in Great Britain that they could talk about, they cover Emma Bridges, who's won nothing.
Do you know what?
And will win nothing. Because they're not going to change the rules. And I just think it's so disgraceful and disrespectful to biological female athletes who we have. I mean, look at all the lionesses. They could have picked any one of them.
Well, indeed.
We have female athletes.
Indeed, or I would plump for Helen Halsby, who is the star of the England Roses netball team, one of the most beautiful women in sport, right, who was just named the entire best player of the World Cup as England made the final for the first time in history. You know, you're so right. Why don't we put those women on a pedestal instead of Emily Bridges, who, as you say, has won nothing? And look, we both want Emily Bridges to be happy, of course we do, but Emily Bridges has also lied here, or Vogue magazine has lied, one or the other, because Emily Bridges is not banned from competing.
No, and never, ever has been. You know, nobody is banned from competing. All that they're banned from is competing in a category they don't qualify for. It's exactly the same as I'm banned from competing in the under-12s. It would be unfair and it would be cheating. And I'm sorry, but it's cheating to want to race in a category where you have an advantage over everybody else in the category. So, you know, I just think, and I think the general public are really getting fed up with this, to be honest with you. All our polling shows us that the general public are very much on the side of wanting fair sport. They want their young daughters and their sisters to have those opportunities, you know, and something like professional sport nowadays is a career.
Totally.
So we're not just talking about hobby that we do at the weekends. You know, this is a job opportunity. There's 1,000 women in this country that earn their living from sport. There's 11,000 men. So we have a tiny piece of cake, Dan, and then for us to be told we got to budge over is just extraordinary, really.
Yeah, no, that's a really extraordinary statistic. Sharon Davies, you know how much I love having you here. Thank you so much. We will speak very soon. But Princess Diana's former butler Paul Burrell on standby straight after the weather.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there, it's Aidan McGibbon here from the Met Office with the GB News forecast. Showers for many of us over the next 24 hours, even across southern areas where it has been relatively warm and fine over the last few days. It's going to turn cooler as low pressure starts to sink south. As that happens, some intense heat over the near continent will spark some thunderstorms through the evening and overnight, those affecting northern France, but some showery activity could just spread into southwestern parts of England and then eventually other parts of the English Channel coast overnight. Some heavier rain also affecting much of central and northern Scotland. In between, a lot of cloud cover and a warm night for many, especially towards the south. But it's in the south where we're going to see some lively activity first thing, some heavier rain predominantly, with the thunderstorms that develop across northern France generally staying around the Channel or across the near continent. Much of that moves out of the way, but still some showery rain for the southeast into the afternoon. Heavy rain moves through northern Scotland, replaced by showers. Showers also affecting Northern Ireland, but actually for northern England, West Wales, southwest England by the afternoon, plenty of fine and bright weather to come. Feeling a bit cooler, and Friday's certainly a cooler day across the UK. Low pressure will bring a northwesterly airflow, a bright start to the southeast, but elsewhere a lot of showers coming through on a brisk northwesterly breeze. In between, some sunny spells and a similar setup for Saturday, a mix of sunny spells and showers and cool for many.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Coming up in Uncancelled, pals of Prince William claims Wills and the King will both be snubbing a meeting with Prince Harry this summer over his Netflix and Spare betrayals. But should the royals give the Duke a second chance and reach out to the isolated Sussexes? One man who knew William and Harry best is their mother's former butler and confidant, Paul Burrell. Princess Diana's Rock, live later. But next in the media buzz, illegal migrants mock Britain on social media by filming their journey across the Channel and posing in luxury hotels. So are our borders now just a global laughing stock? My superstar panel are riled and ready to debate that in just 3 minutes. We'll have tomorrow's newspaper front pages for you here too.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
delicious?
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Let's return to tomorrow's news tonight in our Media Buzz and more front pages just in. One story is dominating, so let's get straight to The Guardian, which leads with the death of Wagner chief Prigozhin after a jet crash near Moscow. The paper says Russian authorities have confirmed the coup leader was among the 10 on board the plane. And the Daily Star, and I have to say they did predict this earlier in the year, so they actually do deserve this moment, saying what we're all thinking, what rotten luck, as they mark the death of Prigozhin in that mysterious plane crash. And they say no one at all shocked. My Superstar panel return now. The author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton, former Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng, and the former Labour Party advisor Matthew Laza. Now, a shocking viral video doing the rounds on TikTok is the latest proof that Britain has become not only a doormat for migrants, but a laughingstock of the world too. Beaming asylum seeker Rahat Popal, an Afghan national, filmed his journey to England that included a high-speed rail trip across France, laughing with friends in a packed dinghy, and then kicking back in a luxury hotel after his boat was towed to shore by the RN ally. Now, that has quite rightly sparked outrage online, with many slamming soft touch Britain being taken for a ride as migrants literally laugh their way to the UK. It came as GB News revealed earlier today that 19,000 illegals have now crossed the English Channel this year. The figure is around 13% down on last year, but that could soon change with excellent weather forecast until the end of the month, completely torpedoing Rishi Sunak's pledge to stop the boats before the next election. So, Christine Hamilton, I don't know about you, but that video made me utterly furious. It's also, by the way, being used as advertising by the people smugglers too.
The effrontery of the guy is just... I mean, it's almost as though he's putting two fingers up to the entire nation. I mean, it is extraordinary. People, I think, they're beginning to despair that they're going to be able to do anything about it. I mean, what were Rishi Sunak's 5 pledges? The bottom pledge was stop the boats. Now, let's forget the other pledges. He hasn't stopped the boats. As far as I can see, he's done virtually nothing except pay a lot of money to the French, who allegedly have stopped some of the boats, but thank God they've stopped a few. But, you know, we've got to, I think, take the ultimate measure of getting out of the ECHR, etc., etc. We cannot go on having foreign judges telling us what we can and what we can't do and who we can and we can't have.
Well, you know, I couldn't agree more.
But they are laughing at us. Of course they are.
And you know, I couldn't agree more with that. But, Kwasi, we also have to start upping the deterrent factor.
Yeah,
because you see there, it ends there with him in this lovely hotel. It would be a very different story if he was in a perfectly human rights acceptable tent in an Essex forest. What's the issue with putting these people in a tent?
I think you're 100% right. And the other thing, you know, we talk about Rwanda, we talk about tough policies once they get here. But we've got to deter them from wanting to come here.
Which means they can't be in a hotel room with a flat screen TV.
Yeah, and then they're on and the dinghy and the sun shining and all of that. And actually we've got to make it, I'm afraid, less attractive for people to come here. And that means being tougher. And, you know, we've been kicking this football around for a very long time. But nothing seems to get done, and that's the frustration. And it's not just about the government. I mean, people talk about the government, the ministers. It's also about the department and the civil service and the Home Office. And, you know, they're the ones who are going to be implementing government policy. And I think there needs to be a radical rethink about it.
But Matthew, doesn't this video prove, by the way, that what a lot of folk like Nigel Farage and myself has been saying is true, and actually what folk on the left say is complete rubbish? You know, this guy, even though he's coming from Afghanistan, is clearly an economic migrant. He's not facing any form of hardship. There's no risk to his life at any point.
Yeah, I mean, clearly, if you know, often people say they're putting their families at risk. You wouldn't be putting a video on TikTok if you were worried about reprisals on your family at home. Look, Afghanistan, partly because of British failure, is not a very nice place, and the problem is we can't have everybody from any country that isn't a very nice place arriving in Britain because it's unsustainable. And we also can't have videos like that promoting coming across on small boats, when, as we've seen tragically over the last few weeks, we've been reminded of the risk actually that people are taking.
But look, if you cut through all the pious seas and they're living in difficult countries, if you look at that TikTok and the emojis and the V sign,
they're very disgraceful.
That is, as you say, taking Michael.
But why can't we kick all of these folk out of hotels, Kwasi? We have to find alternative.
We're trying to put them on the ship.
I mean, it's going to cost £5 billion a year.
We're going to put them on the ship, but of course that had Legionella and God knows what else.
But Kwasi, this is 13 years of failure. There are 150,000 cases in the backlog. This is the Tories government grip on it, and that's why Labour's got a plan to sort it.
When we do turn somebody down, we don't make sure they leave the country too. People who have their claims
exactly right. He talks about 13 years of Tory failure, but when the Tories try and do anything, it's the lefty lawyers and the left that keep these people here. We're trying to put them on a plane and take them to wherever it was in Jamaica, and it was left-wing lawyers who said, no, you can't get rid of them.
Well, it suits Labour.
Yeah, of course it does.
Very well to have this chaos.
Only Labour's got a plan.
He said 13 years of Tory failure, but they're the ones, when we try and deport these people, they're the ones who force them to stay.
Now, look, India made history today by landing their first rover on the moon, despite the country set to take a bumper £57 million in British foreign aid next year. So this is the moment their Vikram craft landed on the moon's south pole just after lunchtime, becoming the first nation on Earth to touch down in the perilous region.
जी हाँ, आप अपनी स्क्रीन पे देख सकते हैं कि हम लैंडर मॉड्यूल.
People are applauding. Let us all wait to hear from the Secretary, Department of Space and Chairman ISRO, Shri S. Somnath.
Vikram's apparently on the hunt for water-based ice, which scientists say could support human habitation on the moon in the future. But the fanfare comes despite us bumping our foreign aid to India by 70%. in 2024, which the Taxpayers Alliance slammed as a debacle. And it follows previous controversial comments from an Indian finance minister who once described Britain's foreign aid as peanuts. Well, for the record, we've given India more than £2.3 billion since 2016. And while I'm absolutely happy for India to become a leader in the space race, it is time for the UK to pull that aid because India's government is not using the money sensibly. And we've got problems here, let's be honest.
It's another example of what a soft touch we are. We're a soft touch as far as the migrants are concerned, and we're a soft touch. I mean, it's crazy that we are funding India's space race.
It's nuts.
Well, but it's also, I mean, it's also, there's clearly still extreme poverty in India, but the Indian government should be addressing that and not messing around in space.
So what how it actually works is that there'll be lots of little schemes, rural schemes and clean water schemes, all sorts of things.
But it's got to be done.
That go up to the government.
I'm sorry, we cannot be giving £76 million to a country that's launching something.
And so what happens is that our aid goes so that the Indian government doesn't have to fund that.
It's ludicrous.
Which is clearly crazy.
Christine Hamilton, Matthew Laza, do stand by because coming up, will Lucy Letby race baiter Kelechi Okafor be the worthy winner of tonight's Union Jackass Award? Find out as we reveal the nominations shortly. But next, in Uncancelled, the King and Prince William are both set to snub a meeting with Harry this summer over his betrayal in Netflix and Spare. Now, separately, there's growing feeling that Charles is starting to come around to the idea of being a so-called caretaker king, paving the way for stars in waiting, Wills and Kate. So, with all the royal latest, Princess Diana's former butler and Paul Burrell will be here in just 2 minutes' time.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's time for Uncancelled. And this is where Britain's top commentators speak out on controversial issues without the fear of the cancel culture sweeping through the rest of the media. And breaking tonight, hopes of an upcoming royal reunion have been scuppered, with a friend of Prince William telling the US outlet The Daily Beast Charles won't be seeing Harry and nor will William. No chance. He feels utterly betrayed by what Harry wrote about him in the book and said about him on Netflix. On William's relationship with Harry, the source added, they were very close growing up, so it has been very painful for William. But ultimately, what can he do? It's very, very sad. I think it is completely understandable that right now William is still absolutely disgusted by what his brother has done. Well, one man who knows all about the family's ups and downs over the years is Princess Diana's former butler and close confidant, Paul Burrell. So, Paul, wow, this is a really strong briefing from a friend of William. But do you agree with what he's saying?
Yes. Dan, I do, because I know the royals well. And listen, the king loves both his boys. But there just isn't time in his diary right now, before he goes to France, to fit Harry and his woes into his schedule. I don't believe there's any way back for Harry. I think both he and Meghan have burned their bridges, not only with the royal family, but with this country. Both William and the King were devastated by Harry's revelations and his indiscretions, and they do not appreciate the fact that Harry has been washing dirty laundry in public. The royals find that appalling. And it's very difficult for them to forget those barbed comments against Camilla, against Kate, against members of the royal family who have been hurt, really hurt by what Harry has said. And so now the royals are standing in solidarity. They're keeping him at arm's length, because if they let him back in to the royal palaces and with the family, he'll just get more information, which he will use as ammunition later. I think the royals are rising above it, and silence is the best policy. Just let them do their own thing.
Indeed. It's excoriating language, though, isn't it? Speaking of being absolutely disgusted. What's interesting to Paul is that it feels like William is taking the lead on this and Charles is prepared to listen to him. And it's William who is laying down the law and saying, absolutely not, Papa. You're not speaking to that guy. We can't forget what he did just a few months ago. You can't forget what he said about Camilla. You can't forget what Meghan said about Kate.
I think you're right, Dan. I think that's what's happening, because the king wants a happy ship, much like his mother liked a happy ship. She did not like confrontation, and I think the king is following suit in that way. And yet William's behind the king saying, look, Papa, I'm going to be king in the near future, and I'm going to have to deal with this mess too. So listen to what I'm saying to you, because I'm going to live with this problem longer than you will. And Harry is going to be a troublesome brother and son. He always was, and he always will be. So how to solve a problem like Harry? It's a very difficult thing to do. And the king, I think, is trying to measure it. I think William is furious, and he's being fueled by Kate, of course, who is equally furious. And I don't think this is going to be sorted out in the near future. I really don't. There is no time for those two. They have turned their back on our country, on its people, on their public duty, on their heritage. It's gone, Dan. It's gone.
Now, Paul, the Prince of Wales was accused of apathy and even sexism over the weekend after failing to attend the Women's World Cup final in Sydney, with accusations that he's even thrown his own father, King Charles, under the bus by shirking his official responsibilities and setting the monarchy up for criticism. Now, Paul, you are usually a big supporter of William, but you think he should have got on the plane to Australia?
I do, Dan. He's made a mistake. And he's allowed to make mistakes. But I believe he should have been in Australia to support the Lionesses as patron of the FA. And that video of him and Kate sat, I think, at Amner Hall, probably in Norfolk,
on holiday. Charlotte, yeah, William and Charlotte.
Sorry, Charlotte, yes. The video of him and Charlotte sat on a bench. I think that was a sweetener to appease what he hadn't done. Spain's royal family were there supporting their national team. Our royal family, or somebody from our royal family, should have been there to support our Lionesses. It's important that William remembers that he is now Prince of Wales. He represents the king on official duties, and he does have a family life too, but he has to balance it. He is patron of the FA. He needs to balance his duties. And in this instance, he didn't. And I think it was a spectacular own goal. The first time I've seen William make a huge mistake.
Paul Burrell, we always love having you. Thank you so much, Princess Diana's former butler and rock. We will speak very soon, Paul. But it's time now to reveal tonight's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. My superstar panel return. Christine Hamilton, who are you nominating as your GB tonight?
Well, I'm nominating about 25 people. They are the pioneering team that did the very first womb transplant, led by Professor Richard Smith and Miss Isabel Quiroga. And although people have said this might be used for possibly the wrong reasons, I think it is an amazing feat of surgery, and they have pushed back the boundaries. So they are collectively my Greatest Britons.
Kwasi Kwarteng, your nominee.
So I think Susan Hall, who's the Tory candidate for mayor, has done a courageous thing and the right thing in pointing out, you know, some of the difficulties relating to the Notting Hill Carnival. It's a great event. It's something that Londoners take very seriously. But there are serious policing issues and there are serious neighbourhood issues. And I think Susan Hall has been very courageous in pointing that out. And of course, she's got the inevitable flack from the usual suspects,
including David Lammy. Yes.
But she's absolutely, I think, a hero for doing that.
Matthew Lazi, your Greatest Britain nominee, please.
Mine is Scottish Labour leader Anna Sarwar, who has revived the party north of the border to the extent that today's polls show it at least equalling, if not surpassing, the SNP in terms of Westminster seats. The true comeback kid.
Well, I've got to go with Kwasi Kwarteng here and Susan Hall, who is the Tory mayoral candidate. And you know what? My message to Susan is stand by your comments, because the vast majority of Londoners agree with you about safety at the Notting Hill Carnival and they agree with you about you, Liz. So don't be weakened by the woke-topians coming after you. They're coming after you because they're scared of you. Christine Hamilton, your Union Jackass nominee.
It's the National Westminster Bank, because they've given 2 fingers to their customers and they've given over £2.5 million to Alison Rose, who broke the very fundamental law of banking, which is, or the first law of banking, which is confidentiality of customers.
Yeah, she's getting 2.4 million. It's just unbelievable. Kwasi Kwarteng, your nominee.
So there's a clear winner, I think, today, and she's called Kelechi Okafor. And I don't actually believe she believes the crazy comments she made about Lucy Letby being a standard for white women. I think she's trying to attract, attention to herself by stirring and race baiting in a very divisive and unhelpful way. And I think she knows exactly what she's doing, and that's why she's the jackass.
Yeah, she was the subject of my digest tonight. If you missed it at the top of the show, this is a little bit of what Kelechi has said.
Presenting it like an anomaly when actually, when we look at it historically and presently, the violence of white women is not an anomaly. It is the standard.
Yeah, well, that's racism. I'm sorry. Matthew Laza, your nominee?
You're not going to like it, Dan, but it's our old friend Nadine Dorries.
You're obsessed. Why is everyone so obsessed with Nadine Dorries?
Because she's still an MP, she's still getting paid, she's still not holding surgeries, and she's still not doing her job. And today, 2 senior Tories have called for her to go.
Kwasi, do you want to stand up for Nadine?
I think Nadine is a great personality, a dynamic force in British politics. And this whole
she needs to do a job then, Kwasi.
This whole gang up on her is just completely
Stop
crazy.
the witch hunt against Nadine Dorries. She's been a great MP. She'll continue to be a good MP. And I want her to stay. Actually, personally, maybe she will. But look, I'm actually going to go with Christine Hamilton and Nat West Bank, because I think the fact that they are rewarding... Oh, OK, apparently someone else thinks differently. So, Kwasi, you were right. OK,
yeah, right.
You both win. You both win. Kwasi Kwarteng, Christine Hamilton, Matthew Laza, thank you so much. I'm back again tomorrow from 9 p.m.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there, it's Aidan McGibbon here from the Met Office with the GB News forecast. Showers for many of us over the next 24 hours, even across southern areas where it has been relatively warm and fine over the last few days. It's going to turn cooler as low pressure starts to sink south. As that happens, some intense heat over the near continent will spark some thunderstorms through the evening and overnight, those affecting northern France, but some shower activity could just spread into southwestern parts of England and then eventually other parts of the English Channel coast overnight. Some heavier rain also affecting much of central and northern Scotland. In between, a lot of cloud cover
and a warm night for many, especially towards the south. But it's in the south where we're going to see some lively activity first thing, some heavier rain predominantly, with the thunderstorms that develop across northern France generally staying around the Channel or across the near continent. Much of that moves out of the way, but still some showery rain for the southeast into the afternoon. Heavy rain moves through northern Scotland, replaced by showers. Showers also affecting Northern Ireland, but actually for northern England, West Wales, southwest England by the afternoon, plenty of fine and bright weather to come. Feeling a bit cooler, and Friday's certainly a cooler day across the UK. Low pressure will bring a northwesterly airflow, a bright start to the southeast, but elsewhere a lot of showers coming through on a brisk northwesterly breeze. In between some sunny spells and a similar setup for Saturday, a mix of sunny spells and showers and cool for many.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.